Welcome to A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to My Life. This is the place to be for stories to inspire and uplift when life doesn't go according to our plans. I'm Laura Muirhead, your host and the reigning queen of A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to My Life. I can't wait to share the plot twist stories of my guests that will inspire and uplift you when life didn't follow the plan, right here on A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to My Life podcast. Hi, welcome to this episode of A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to My Life. I'm Laura Muirhead from lauramuirhead.com, and I am so happy to welcome as my guest today, Cindi Buenzli Gertz. Welcome, Cindi. I'm so happy you're here. Come and introduce yourself. Tell us where you are in the world and what you do.
Yeah, thank you, Laura. I'm so excited to be here. So I am in a little town called Amory, Wisconsin, and I work with women who are going through the challenges and the changes of midlife and menopause. And I want to help them do that with more grace and confidence and ease and vibrancy. So I am 20 plus years a yoga teacher, and that journey has evolved over time. I love the name of your podcast, A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to My Life. And there have been a lot of twists and turns. And what I'm most passionate about right now is serving women who are in midlife. So about going on 10 years ago, I created a program called the Vibrant Woman Program. And it is a women's circle that meets year round. And as part of that, I have a couple of circles that are focused on menopause. And I work both in groups online. The stuff that I do with the sisterhood and circles and groups is online. And I went online a couple of years ago. And when I work with people individually, which that's also an option, if they're local, they can come to my home studio, which you are seeing right now, or we can do that online as well. So that's the work that I'm doing in the world right now, and having a great time doing it. Not at all what I expected 20 years ago.
Yeah, and I love that this is what you're doing. This is a really interesting and probably much needed space that you're helping people with. But let's go back those 20 years and find out, like, this isn't what you thought you were going to be doing. What tell us about that. Tell us where you started.
Right. So getting ready to have this conversation with you, I was reflecting on that. And I was remembering how back in my school days, my college days, I was very adamant in telling my friends that I'm never going to get married. I'm never going to have kids. And I'm definitely never going to own my own business. And I have done all three of those things. I'm 24 years happily married. I have two grown kids, one in college, the other one about to fly the coop. And I'm an entrepreneur. And, I didn't think I was going to do any of those things. And here I am. And it's been an incredible journey, many twists and turns. I really thought that I was going to be an interior designer. And then I took a turn into the world of nonprofit for about 7 years, where I was a director and a program manager. And then I found yoga, or as I say in the book that I was a co-author of last year, yoga found me. So I lost my train of thought, which sometimes happens in midlife, right?
Okay, so you went to school for interior design,
Yeah.
and that's where you started out. Your path was going that way. And once you got out of school, did you start? I mean, did you have some jobs in interior design? What happened after you got out of school?
Yeah, that thank you. That will help me get back on track and remember where I was going with that, the whole story. I was a design assistant for a while, and the market like for finding jobs wasn't really great back in the mid 90s for my field, and I could have gotten some unpaid internships, but at that point I had some student loans, so I wasn't interested in that. But what I desired in being a designer, and this is one of the threads that's carried through my whole life, is I desired to serve people and I desired to help people. So at that time, the Americans with Disabilities Act was fairly new, and the ADA was a whole new thing rising up in the design field, accessibility, and that's what I wanted to go into. And so that made it even, slimmer pickings for finding jobs. The internships were there, but not the jobs. So I ended up working for the Michigan chapter of the National MS Society through the AmeriCorps program, which is kind of like the domestic Peace Corps, on an accessibility project. And I also managed a team of AmeriCorps volunteers and was in charge of a mentoring program. So there's kind of this thread of serving people, happened. And I moved from that position in Lower Michigan up to Upper Michigan and continued work with a different organization, Big Brothers and Big Sisters. But this need to serve, and that's a mentoring program as well. So this need to serve, this need to mentor, and this need to be creative were kind of woven through this entire journey. And so while we were in Upper Michigan, and I got married in that time frame too, another twist of fate, just jobs didn't align. My husband didn't get the job he thought he was going to. I had already left mine, but I was also really getting burnt out on what I call the 3 Ps, which I write about in the book that I co-authored in my story, of pushing, pleasing, and perfecting. So, I was in service, but at the detriment to my own health. And so that is when I found yoga, and when, with my teacher's help, discovered that, I wanted to share this with other people. And also we started a family. So it felt like something that would blend really nicely to be able to do those two things, to be at home more with my child, and to also stay engaged in service, be creative. And so that's how I ended up becoming a yoga teacher.
Well, and I do think I want to comment back about what you said, that I have two things I want to comment about. One is that when you said, you kept saying that you weren't going to get married, you weren't going to have kids, you weren't going to be an entrepreneur. If you keep saying those things, right, the universe is like, I hear you. Oh, you're saying, oh, kids, family, entrepreneur. Right. Yes. Okay. All these things. Here you go. But then also, I love that sometimes children change our path. Having children, having a baby definitely changed, my daughter, my oldest, definitely changed, how I looked at my job and what I wanted to do. And, I think for you, that sounds like that happened as well. Like, how can I balance my new family and wanting to still be out there, be of service in the world? And so I feel like that's beautiful that you were able to bring those together that way.
Yeah. And I still had even early on when my kids were little, I still had a lot to learn about not burning myself out, about not taking on too much and finding that balance. And over the years, it's evolved into, I don't call myself so much a yoga teacher anymore, because that's just one little tiny part of what I do. As I call myself a midlife midwife.
I love that. I love that term, midlife midwife. And I think too that it sounds like your journey with yoga, with all of it, has evolved. Like you had extensive training in yoga, right?
Yeah.
And so that was your for quite a while. Correct me. I mean, let me know if I'm wrong, but for many years, that was what you did. And then that evolved at one point into what you're doing now.
Yeah, it's funny that you say for many years that's what you did. And in this moment, I'm having a recognition of how I did that. I taught yoga to, and I used to promote myself as teaching yoga to all bodies and all abilities. And I did everything from prenatal yoga to baby yoga to yoga for beginners, intermediate, advanced yoga, learn how to stand on your head, to chair yoga at the senior center. I was doing all of this. And again, I was like just trying to be everything to everybody. And I did that for about the first 10 or so years of teaching, and just till I couldn't anymore. And then, through the process of kind of redesigning or recreating how I was going to offer what I do into the world, is how I came to see myself as a midlife midwife, where, I help other women who are in midlife recover from burnout if they are, or learn how to not be burnt out in what I call those sandwich years, where you're and all these experiences. I mean, thank goodness I've had all these experiences, being a wife, being a mother, being a business owner, being an employee at one part of my life, being a volunteer organizer, all of these different things. These are things that women are juggling all the time: raising families, managing a house, nurturing their own career or their passions or their projects, whether they're paid or unpaid work. It's all really important, and women do so much of that. And then we have, on the other half of the sandwich, is we get into those midlife years, and then we're caring for aging parents, and then throw onto the heap perimenopause and menopause and all of the things we go through that, I was hoping by the time that I was going through perimenopause and menopause, that there would be a different legacy around all of it, that there wouldn't still be so much silence, but there is. Yeah, so.
Well, and as you're talking, I'm just thinking too that about some of the people I know, or some of my experiences, and that desire, like you say, to balance everything. But as you're trying to do all the things, whether it's a job or a career, or being an entrepreneur and having your family, and trying to find something that makes you happy personally as women, sometimes the things that we love the most get pushed aside for these other things that we really take priority over it. The kids, of course, take priority. Your spouse, whoever it is, your partner. And I think a lot of times we find ourselves, number one, like you said, burned out. And number two, wanting that other fulfillment of our own, whether it's creativity. I think creativity is really almost all encompassing, however it is that we want to be creative in the world, and or of service or whatever. And if I feel like if we don't fill that cup, if you will, fill that vessel, then it contributes even more to the burnout. And as you mentioned too, the people pleaser, and that is big, where you're running around and I talk about that in my program as well, that I offer. And that can be huge, where you're just running around making everyone happy, but you're not making yourself happy. So I love that this is what you're doing. And as you mentioned, that it's kind of this still a bit of a stigma, not really mentioned, of, 'cause once in a while when you see other women and they're, having a hot flash, and that's about as much as we would say. So, expand on that a little bit, if you will. Go ahead, tell us more about that.
Well, there's so many juicy nuggets just in what you just said, like creativity, for example. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We're all, as women, inherently creative. And well, when we're going through our menstrual cycle, and I'll probably be candid with some of the things I say, and we're going through those years where we're bleeding, like all of our energy is kind of poured into our cycle, and the ups and downs of the cycle. And for those people listening who are interested in cycles of nature, the waxing and the waning of the moon, and our cycle can mirror that. And there are times in our life where under the light of the full moon, and when we come into our ovulation, where we're full, and that's the height of our creativity. And then other times when we need to rest and when we need to go inward during the time of the dark moon, which also, if we didn't have all kinds of artificial light, would coincide with when we bleed. And so there's this inherent creativity, but all of the energy is going there, right? And the beautiful thing about menopause is that we still have those creative juices flowing through us, but now they can move into different directions. So one of the things that I hope to impart to women about shifting this legacy is, like you said, to take it away from this is something I just have to get through. I feel isolated. It's undervalued and underappreciated, and kind of shift that legacy to one of celebration and initiation into the rest of our lives, and to our wise womanhood. I like to think of us as being crones, which is not a dirty word, right? As a wise way shower, and it's up to us to embrace the younger women and help them understand what this transition is going to be like. Because even though it can be a celebration, it's not always easy. It can be a really difficult thing to go through for most women, and probably about 3/4 of the women, at least in our culture, experience some kind of, like, what I would call discomforts, because I believe in natural cycles and the cycles of the earth and the moon and our bodies. And to me, menopause doesn't belong in the realm of medicine unless you are having serious troubles and need help. Most of what we go through is very natural. And where was I going with that train of thought? I love midlife. That happens all the time.
Well, let me just say a couple things, because what you're talking about, I do feel like there is a coming back, or an awareness coming back to the cycles of the earth, the moon cycles, the crone, the wise woman. Years, ancient times, the wise woman was the one that everybody would go to in their culture. Well, let's go ask the wise woman, she will help us. And I do feel like that there's an awareness coming back, at least around the people in my circles that I see. And even the connection to the earth, the connection to the moon, the natural cycles a little bit more. There's an awareness coming back, I hope, for that. And also, I also was going to say something else about that. There is so much that I think, I'm trying to put my words together, but have lived. There's so much value to someone who has lived a certain amount of years and experienced life that they can pass on to others. But also, on the other hand, once the women who are at this age, who have the time now, maybe because the kids have grown, and maybe your husband still, or your partner, whoever, is still working, and you're finding that, okay, where can I spend my time maybe a little better, maybe help people. And so I think a lot of women at this age start to find themselves a little bit more, even because they're done raising their families and starting and actually starting new businesses, and becoming entrepreneurs, or writing books, or mentoring people. So there's all of that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's where the potential and the possibility lie in going through the process and the transition into menopause. And and sometimes women feel they feel a little bit lost at first, especially if they've like had this certain identity for such a long time, and then all of a sudden things change, and that can be really hard. So it's both. It's like, yes, there are hard things about this. And uh, that seems to be what we focused on. And like you, I'm glad to see more of an honoring of the natural cycles as well. And other cultures where, the elders, the shamans, the abuelas are already revered. And for some reason in the culture that I live in, that has been lost. And so I look to those cultures in appreciation and for inspiration, and want to aspire to be part of that and bring that back.
So for what you do now, what you currently do as midwife, I just love that. Do you still incorporate yoga and yoga practice in with that, or what tools do you use
Yeah.
to help women?
Well, that's a really great question because, there are so many different ways to bring yoga to the world. And so going through midlife, what I found myself relying on the most were mudra practice, which is hand gestures, breathing, lots of breathing, and restorative yoga, and a flow of poses called the moon salutation, which was developed in the late 80s at the Kripalu Center, which is where my training comes from. And it was created by women for women. So those are the yoga tools that I specifically bring into my circles and my one-on work. Gentle movement is part of that. When I'm working with somebody one-on-one, it's I like it better than a class setting because number one, it's very conducive to my energy of not being able to, like not having to hold such a big space. And at one point that became very draining for me. And what I love about working just one-on-one with somebody is that I can meet them in the moment. And we know going through perimenopause that every day is different. Like I like to think of perimenopause like it's like each woman's experience is like a snowflake. It's going to be unique because there are a myriad of things you could experience physically, emotionally, mentally, or spiritually. And again, I like to call them discomforts, not symptoms, because I don't view it as a medical problem, but a natural transition. So you have these myriad of things, but then you bring in like a funny thing happened on the way to my life. All these twists and turns that happen that you don't expect, your life experience, plus your own body chemistry, your cultural background. And so we have these common things that we can experience in our body, but the way they manifest to me is like each woman is going to have a unique experience. So I can meet her right in the moment. And then when we're in circle, we practice the types of yoga that I mentioned, but we also do things like journaling, or sometimes we might do something creative like a vision board, or like a mini body self-portrait kind of thing. So all designed to create a greater awareness of what's going on in your body, to tap into your own intuition and your inner wisdom, and to really be the creator of your own joyful journey, because we have this golden opportunity at midlife to kind of look back on our lives and see where those twists and turns were, and things we wish we would have done differently, things we did great. And then we have all this wisdom, and then we can create what we want going forward. We can decide how we're going to show up and who we want to be. And that can be so freeing. And so
I love
joyful.
this. Yeah, I love this. We actually just last week, and I'm in Michigan, had a workshop in my studio, and we created dream boards. And the women who were there, it was wonderful. And so I love that you incorporate that. We also here in this town, they offer chair yoga for people who are, a little bit older, can't do full body yoga. And I love that too, because there's so much to still moving your body, even at whatever age, at 70, at 80, even 90, if you are still, out there moving your body. And I love that you are able to serve women that way, to meet them at their level and offer all these different things. I'm sure some of it just is like, okay, here's what we need to do today. I'm sure a lot of it is inspired for you to know what your group needs maybe that month or that week. I don't know how often you meet, but I love that you bring all these tools in for that.
Yeah, thank you. And we do meet monthly in the Vibrant Women's Circle. And it really is about it. I like to work intimately with smaller groups and one-on-one, because it really is about meeting people in the moment. And it's also like that drop of water that has a ripple effect. And what I see with these women is they work on themselves and their self-care, and they come into a place of vibrancy and balance and grace and confidence and strength. And I'm naming some of the themes that are in the year long that we do. We meet yearly and we rotate themes every month. And so they're coming into their vibrancy, and then it has a ripple effect. It starts to ripple out to their families and their friends, and then into the community, and it's just like this one little drop, but it's so powerful. It has such an effect on so many people. And that's one of the things that, I wake up every morning and I'm like, wow, I'm so lucky I get to do this job today.
I love this. And I love your ripple effect. I totally am on board with that, because once you raise your vibration a little bit, of course, that's going to, if you come home happy after having a wonderful experience with you and your circle, it's hard for the rest, whoever's still in your household to not experience that as well, versus coming home crabby or, whatever. But the other thing that I was thinking as you were talking was that I was thinking about my grandparents, my grandmas, and this would have never been an opportunity for them. They just wouldn't have even they didn't do it. It wasn't something that they would have thought of, it wasn't offered. So this is an amazing thing, even in the last few years, that has come about. And I'm sure they would have enjoyed it as well, to be able to connect with other women that way. I think a lot of women previous, as like I said, as I'm thinking about my grandparents, what connection with other women did they really have? And was it really encouraged? It wasn't. Maybe through church, or maybe my one grandma didn't really ever have a career, or she was a homemaker, and where was her connection? And mostly with, maybe as couples, through her husband, through my grandfather's connections, or clubs that they belong to, like maybe the Elks Club, or they actually belong to the Eagles, the Fraternal Order of Eagles. But I don't know that they even encouraged the women to meet, like the women of the Eagles or anything. So imagine if they would have had, so this has really evolved over the last couple decades.
Yeah, definitely. You had me thinking of my own grandmother. One of them was, a single mom. She had two kids to raise. She lost her husband in her 30s. She moved back into her parents' big house and continued to work, right up until I was a little girl. And where would she have found the time for that, or the resources? I don't ever remember her talking about such things. I mean, we can go back much further in time, and women had like their knitting circles and sewing circles and things like that. And maybe maybe they did share more back then, but somewhere along the way, it's gotten lost. And that's why I'm so passionate about bringing this idea back of a circle and to be able to share. And you also brought up, women who are aging and going into their crone years, and this stuff I'm talking about, menopause, is still important for them too. And I'll just give a couple examples. So first of all, around the time of menopause is called peri. Peri means around. And so some women, post menopause they can still be experiencing hot flashes and, heart palpitations and anxiety, not to mention, the vaginal atrophy and dryness and things that happen. And so, but there's even more. I mean, I would love for them to have a place to not only impart their wisdom around, oh, this is what I was able to do when this happened, but to also understand what are some of the possible things that can happen. Is it's not like a switch is just flipped off. Oh, you're in menopause and nothing else is going to happen. I helped my mom go through a major surgery a few years ago because her organs were prolapsing. I'm beginning to experience that myself, but there's this beautiful thing called pelvic PT, and I want to be able to share that with other women. And there's also, if you bleed after you've been into menopause, what are the things that you should be aware of and know about, so that you can keep your reproductive organs healthy and strong, and you can, feel confident sexually and perceive yourself still as this sexually vibrant person. And so there's so much of this that they have wisdom to impart and things to know. And then for women who maybe had a medical menopause where it's just like it happened so abruptly for whatever reason, maybe they had to have their womb removed or they had cancer, and chemotherapy can cause that, is they didn't have a chance for this unfolding process to happen, which can be anywhere from 2 to 12 plus years to be in perimenopause, which to me is just an astounding amount of time. And I've been on the longer end of it, so I have a lot of experience to share. But then also, so the women who just didn't get a chance to experience it. And I think there was a third group of women who are in menopause too, but it's just kind of escaping me right now. But the point is, there's lots of reasons to also be engaged. Even you're like, oh, that doesn't sound like me anymore. But midlife spans a lot, quite a few years.
Well, I agree with this because I think we don't really think about it. I don't think we're really as aware. I don't think that our Western medicine really embraces it or educates us on it. And I can think of a friend of mine who told me, this was years ago, that just so happened they moved from one state to another. And she said, we moved and that was it for me. And she was like, I was done. So like very quickly done, over. But then like you're saying, there's other women who and probably don't even realize that they're experiencing this for years and years and years, and
Right.
really basically unaware because we aren't educated on what to expect, on what is happening in our bodies, like you said, or these women who maybe even are fairly young who have had hysterectomies or whatever surgeries, like you're saying, or really unfortunately maybe cancers. So absolutely.
Yeah, and I don't think it's ever too early to learn about what to expect, or too late to heal and experience. Well, you said something that kind of sparked interest in me, and I've lost my train of thought again. Oh, where did it go? It felt so important in the moment.
Maybe it'll come back.
Yeah,
Well,
maybe
and
so.
it just is. I really do feel that and I do think that Western medicine and the doctors are basically I can remember, I should share one of my personal experiences. This was probably when I was in my early 40s, going to the doctor, and I don't know what I said to him, but he said, well, you're getting old.
Mm,
And it really hit me because we're just supposed to, at some point early in your 40s, start thinking that way, start accepting, well, you're getting older, you're getting old, you might as well just accept that these things are going to happen as you age. And it really hit me because I was like, no, I don't have to just accept that this is a natural course of action for my body. And I really don't remember what the situation was at the time, but whatever it is, it doesn't really matter. If you keep getting fed, well, you're getting older, you're getting old, just accept it. And I don't agree with that. I just don't agree with it. I know that there are things that we can do, dietary, movement, things that you offer, on an extended level, as far as, emotional support, spiritual support, raising your vibration in these different ways that you offer, different things that bringing awareness to it. So
yeah.
I just don't agree with it, especially when you're 40.
I know, right? I hear you. So one of the funny twists and turns along the way here is that I actually married an English teacher. So I've become somewhat of a word nerd, and I want to reframe this for us. So I like to differentiate between acquiescence and acceptance. So acceptance, like I know, and I've heard that one, women have said that before, you just have to accept you're getting older. And so I want us to all take a new frame around this and understand that I want to call that acquiescence is giving up and quitting, right? But acceptance, the root of that word accept means to receive. So, what I like to teach women in my circles is yes, let's accept that our bodies changing, but we don't have to acquiesce to it. We do not have to give up. We do not have to quit. That is one of the myths of menopause, right along up there with, oh, you're too young. It's like, no, we women, we know our bodies, and our intuition is stronger than we give it credit for. And another wise teacher once said that if you're questioning, oh, I'm noticing this in my body, could this be? Then it probably is. And somebody outside of your experience telling you you're too young, or you just have to accept that you're getting old, or whatever it is that they're telling you, that's just their external in opinion and perspective and framework. And really what I want women to do is to start trusting in themselves. Like you were not willing to receive those words and take them on as your truth. And I say, good for you.
I appreciate that. And, I've had, even after that, I had some medical challenges, and luckily I actually found a holistic doctor that really helped me and helped. It was the first doctor. I don't really necessarily want to talk all about Western medicine, but it seems to fit here for a minute. In that the first time I had a doctor who said, read this book, and then read this book, and then read this book. And it was an awareness for me of, oh, if I could educate myself about what my body's experiencing, then that will help, versus just listening to a doctor saying, like I said, let me go back to that. Oh, just you're getting old and you might as well just deal with that. And whatever your body's going to start to experience, there's nothing you can do about it. Whatever's coming at you, there's nothing you can do about it. No, that's not true. But I love your change of words. It's beautiful to hear it that way. Yes, obviously, every day we're getting older, but that doesn't mean that we can't continue to live lives and even change our bodies
Yeah,
if we choose to.
exactly. And to live vibrantly. Um, yeah, absolutely. So I was picking up on something you said about reading and awareness. And And that is one of the keys that I talk about, is not just accepting the changes that are happening, not acquiescing to them, but accepting them, embracing them, but also increasing your awareness. And that can be done through reading. And that is one of the incredible gifts of mindfulness and yoga, is body awareness. So, a woman, I'm just going to take a hot flash, for example, because this was in a recent conversation with some of my circle sisters that I'm part of. And we were talking about the different ways, and these are all people who are really experienced in yoga and self-awareness. And we were talking about hot flashes and how over the years we've been able to pinpoint when one is coming, because there's a little telltale sign in the body that happens just before the hot flash. And for me, it's like just this little feeling of tightness and dread. For another woman, it's nausea. For another woman, it was a heart palpitation. So it's like really being that aware is such a gift, because it can help you make choices. It can also help you be okay with what's happening. Like, instead of panicking, when I get that little feeling of dread, nowadays I just go, oh yeah, hot flash is coming, and I stay calm and I stay centered, instead of like my adrenals going into overdrive. So, and that, the endocrine system is like kind of like these lock and keys systems, and they all affect each other. So like, when you can stay calm and your adrenals don't go into overdrive, it's like it affects everything else in your body.
Yeah, it's so true. I love that. That if you can get to the point where you're listening to your body at that level and knowing that, okay, here's my clue. Here's my telltale sign for whatever it is, for the hot flash, for whatever it is, and not let your body just, especially your adrenals, go off the charts. And it's so important. The other thing I was thinking about, I was going to go back to the women's circle that you offer, because I think I go back to even how sometimes there are like mommy and me classes offered after you have your baby, and that supportive, or maybe there's a best friend. I could think of my couple of best friends that I had when my kids were growing up, and we were able to bounce things off each other. And maybe this is what's going on, with my 6-month-old. What's your 6-month-old experiencing? Oh, no, it's not the same. Yes, no. But same with this. If you can have that group support to bounce the things off of, is this something that I'm, should be, not should be experiencing, but this is what I'm experiencing. What are you experiencing? And share your life experiences to maybe even somewhat normalize it, which it is anyway. But to just be able to share that in the group, I think that's so important as well, to have those connections with someone that's having similar things going on with them.
Yeah, you bring up a really good consideration, and I have a couple ideas around that. And the first one is, that's kind of why I've shifted out of like yoga teacher role into midlife midwife, which is more of a facilitator, because I have a lot of knowledge to impart, but I don't know everything, and nobody does, right? And so that's one of the beautiful things that can happen in a circle of women, and you can share, and you can share, well, what's working for you? What resource do you know of? Or oh my gosh, I've never heard of this before. And that's part of what I love about sharing stories too, is how much we can learn from each other, and how interesting they are. And I think that's an important part of circle. And I see myself as more of a, especially in the inspired menopause circle, is more of a facilitator of like, okay, like I only do it once a year, this circle. So it's like, what are your questions? What is coming up? And one of the topics that has been really, really hot has been, painful sex, sexual pleasure, and also how to perceive ourselves as sexual beings, and to appreciate our body parts like our vaginas, and like it's okay to say that word out loud, you know. So I don't hold back in my circles. We talk about everything, and this has given me a great opportunity in the last year to learn even more. And this year when I do the circle, I'll be talking about what I've learned in the last year. Like, this is what I've learned about these things that came up, and I want to share them with you. What have you learned since we last met?
Yeah, that's beautiful, because that's true. Somebody might have said, you might have an experience where they said, well, this worked for me. I tried that, it didn't work for me, but then I tried this and it did work for me. And just or maybe somebody's experienced something that you've not heard somebody experience before. This is what happened to me. And so then maybe there's some research to be done. Oh, how can we go farther and help support someone who does another person who I might come across that experiences that. I think that's really beautiful in that interchange of information.
Yeah, me too.
I think that's really important. I also, one of the other things that you had talked about is how women maybe in the earlier years, maybe there was a gap when our grandparents were, maybe things changed and then are changing back, because like when you're saying, like, even when you're thinking about women who had the quilting circles or the sewing circles or the knitting circles in this town that we are in, it's a small community, and they do have knitting circles, and they do have a group that quilts, and they do have these there's a women's club, there's a junior women's club, there's all these things, and they come together for whatever their common thing, common cause is. Our women's club here offers, they kind of incorporate a couple things, because they have a group of women who create a quilt every year, and then they offer scholarships to the high school kids that are going on to, and it doesn't have to be college, it could be whatever their chosen thing is. It could be, a tech school or whatever. It doesn't have to be college, but they offer scholarships to them. But here's these women that meet and for common cause, but then they also have a subgroup of those women who create a quilt, and they raffle the quilt to also help raise money. So actually I was fortunate enough to win one of their quilts a couple of years ago, and it's gorgeous. And really, when you think about it, what are the chances, where are you going to, I know there are people who still create quilts, but where was I going to get a handmade quilt, and actually by women that I know? So it is nice that those things are having a resurgence, besides, the health areas as well, and what you do. Because I do think it's really important to have that connection.
Yeah, and what I'm imagining right now, because I'm seeing some resurgence of that in my own community, and I'm part of a group of women that gets together in scrapbooks, and I can see the overlap there. So often when I go to one of these, something along the lines of what I do will be brought up, and I'm always kind of torn, because I'm there to recharge my batteries and not really talk about work, but yet women are asking, and they're commenting on their own hot flashes or something like that. And so what I would love to see happen is, like, more of those conversations come into these circles where women are getting together, and I just feel really grateful that I can be a little piece of that puzzle, and that, again, there's that ripple effect. So, maybe the women that I'm in circle with will go to their other creative circles and start sharing some of these things too.
Well, and I think also when you're just saying that even though you're in your scrapbooking group and maybe they're talking about these other things, it's probably fairly natural for them to to bring it up, to bring a lot of people talk about their medical issues, especially as they're older, and oh, this creaky knee or this creaky hip or whatever. And so I would think the hot flashes would definitely come up as you're scrapbooking. So
Right.
for you to be able to say, hey, I can give you some help, some support with that. I can offer some, education in that area. I think and that's what kind of flows naturally, I would think, in that circle.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. Yeah, there we are, back to that, the natural, the organic unfolding of things, which I love so much, which is kind of like what this conversation has been like.
Right. And that's the thing that makes me think too, because I, even in when women are doing art together, whatever they're doing together, women like to talk and they
Yeah.
like to communicate. And then maybe even if they feel comfortable enough, bring up something that they're experiencing that might be challenging in their life, not necessarily even a medical issue, just maybe whatever personal thing it might be. And there's that support, and that, hopefully people could come together and offer advice or whatever it is. And again, that comes back to the crone, if we're talking about women of our age group or even or older. And if we can honor I'm sorry, it just took this thought just came to me. Again, my one grandma, of course, we loved her, but the grandkids, we kind of saw her, I don't want to say silly, but we kind of just didn't really think of her as necessarily a really intelligent woman, but I was lucky enough to go to travel with my grandma and grandpa to Finland. That's where our family is Finnish, that side of the family. And I was 14. So, not necessarily at my age when I would really appreciate it, but I did appreciate it. I fully appreciated that trip. But I saw my grandma in a different light. And I saw her as a strong woman because of some of the things that she told me and said to me. And it really was a different view on her. And I'm really grateful for that time that I had with both of them, but especially to be able to see my grandma in this other light that maybe my cousins have never seen her in. So, but there is, no matter who we are, when we come to this age, or her age, she was older than I was at that point, that there is so much that they have to offer, wisdom wise, and the life experiences, whatever it is.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love, and I hear the appreciation you have for your grandmother's wisdom, and it reminds me again that it really, one of the things I want to impart is what a celebration it is. And we celebrate coming into our menses, we celebrate fertility. You mentioned, there's always organized mommy and me groups. I was part of them when I was younger, nursing groups. There's always, groups supporting us in our fertility and our child rearing. And I'd like to see more organized groups and celebrations around this time of life, of midlife and menopause.
I think it would be so valuable to so many people. Absolutely. Because like you said, it's just overshadowed. I feel like it's just not even really brought up for women. Maybe they talk to their doctors about it, or maybe they kind of make their comments in their circles, their women's circles, but where's the actual support to, like, what you're offering, things that you're really offering them?
Yeah, well, right here is one of them. So, thank you for inviting me to do this and to be able to talk about it so candidly and to share it with other women. I'm deeply grateful.
Well, I really appreciate you being willing to come on. I'm sure our listeners are getting a lot of great information from it. I think this is a great place to just wrap up and just let people know, tell our listeners where they can find you on social media or a website so they can connect with you as well.
Yeah, great. So there's a couple different ways people could stay in touch. I produce a weekly, I call it a love letter, a little snippet of sacred self-care. It's called The Joyful Journey weekly. One time a month, I go live with it. So it's a half hour of having me in person. And the whole intent of it is to teach something, to uplift and to inspire a shift. And then I have a group online called on Facebook called Practices for Peace for Midlife Women. And this is a free group. Anybody can join it. I have a Facebook page, Conscious Living Arts. But I would say all the action is in the group. There's a lot of engagement in there. We're talking a lot about menopause right now. And if anybody wants to know more about my courses, that are coming up in springtime is when I focus on menopause. So this is all very timely and it's coming up now, the spring of every year. You can go to courses.consciouslivingarts.com. And the link for the Joyful Journey is a bit.ly and it's a mouthful. And I know you're going to be putting it in the session notes and posting it. So just look for the Joyful Journey to stay in touch and sign up.
That's wonderful. All the links will be in the notes. Also, so the once a month live that you do, is that on Facebook as well?
Right now it's quite an intimate circle, so I do it on Zoom. I don't know if I'll ever do it live on Facebook. So people can sign up; they can be there live, or if the time that I do it isn't working out with their schedule, as long as they sign up, I'll send them the recording.
Oh, that's wonderful. I love it. Well, I am so grateful for our time together, and I really want to thank you for joining me. And then also thank our listeners for joining us today as well.
Thank you, Laura. This has been fantastic, and I'm so grateful.
Well, I so enjoyed hearing your funny thing happened on the way to my life story.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to My Life podcast. For more information, visit my website at www.lauramuirhead.com.